5:05 of Just Joshing. I am your host, Josh Pantellaresco, and I feel a little guilty tonight because Julia was supposed to, I guess, over a week ago. I pooped up. I gone and pooped up twice, not once, but twice. So Julia has graciously decided not to give me a hideous beating, at least publicly. Now maybe privately, maybe somewhere down the road.
Privately.
I would be like this, and if I meet Julia and I come back with like a black eye, I fell down. The door just was not nice to me. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But I want to make sure I got this right because I don't know if I'm gonna say this fully right. Julia Jinkyong Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get it?
Yes.
Yes. Right. So yeah, this is my guest tonight. I have actually never interviewed Julia on the show before. This is actually a first for me. So yeah. So we were talking about. Because we both, I'm in Ontario, she's in Michigan, so we're talking about bridges, and we're talking about snow because obviously we both have experience with the weather here being what it is, and we're talking about like worst nightmares, and I figure that's a good spot as any to get started with, and so what I was that was where we were at. Now to continue the conversation. So the best thing about the best thing about the Ambassador Bridge and is in the wintertime is, right. Hold on a second here. I'm trying to get this in so I can get comments. There we go. I want to make sure I got this right. Give me a second here. That's it. Okay, good. We're set. Now I can just watch comments from everybody now and
Wonderful.
not feel bad about it. But what I was saying is like the best time to drive the bridge then is when it's absolutely busy. Like the one thing about the Ambassador Bridge, guaranteed. Depending on the day you go, you're not going anywhere fast. Like that's the only part about the trip that sucks because what tends to happen is because it's where all the truck drivers go. And
right.
So in the wintertime, it's like there's nothing to be afraid of really because you're gonna be stuck. You're gonna get somewhere and you're just gonna sit there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna sit there.
Yeah.
It's really hard to slip and slide. And you're going inches an hour sometimes, like literally inches.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous. We were talking about like my fear being like driving off the lane and like just stranding my car or something by driving off the road in the snow because you can't see the end of the lane. But like it's ridiculous because like I've been driving since I was like I did driver's training I think when I was 16. So it's like I'm 35 now. I know how to drive in the snow, but it's just like that anxiety that it's just like when I'm driving, that'd be like, oh my gosh, does the road really go straight like I think it does, or does it curve? You know? So it's like that doubting myself and just being like anxiety brain, where it's like, am I really like gonna stay on the road, or am I just gonna be like, all of a sudden I'm like stranded on the side, you know, like an idiot.
So here's a scary red chip story for you. Here's
Okay.
a really scary one. Alberta. A bunch of my buddies and I are going off to a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. Yes, I am that kind of nerd. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I love it.
From Calgary to Edmonton was always like a wild time because the weather is wonky in Alberta at the best of times. This is when now 2 red deer, we're fine. Like it is total smooth sail.
Okay.
So red deer, I still remember this to this day. There's like this little white streak that started. It hit the road. It's almost like a virus. Next thing you know, you're in like this snowy tundra. We're still on the highway. Go off. We leave. Now this is where it gets like freaky. Now we're in a blizzard. We went from like nothing to a blizzard, and so 2 of my friends happened to be larger guys. So what happened was, one of them got moved to the back seat. I got moved to the front seat because of weight distribution. Because it was so windy out, the car was actually going. Wee!
Oh my goodness!
Oh, yeah, and here's the scary. Now here's scary. It was like we were the only people on the road. That was the good thing. Everybody else was on the side of the road because everybody. Oh no! It was a graveyard of cars just stuck out in the weather. It was like unbelievable. Michigan, although it does get like, I just went outside. A friend of mine goes to me, it's cold. I'm from Alberta.
Mm.
It ain't
Mhm.
cold. Like it's not that cold to me out there. It's
Mhm.
I wear it's like whatever. I'm fine. It's also on top of the fact too. I like at my temp job right now. I'm working in a freezer, which is
Oh, yeah.
so I don't I've worked in the cold for a substantially long time. So I don't react like I'm not saying I like here's the thing, I love the heat. I prefer the heat to the cold actually, but I'm good in both because
Mhm.
I've done it for so
Right.
long. It just doesn't hit me the same way. So it's milder here than when it was in Alberta. So
Right.
it's worse. Like I would work in -30, -40. I was in
Mhm.
trailers that were just freaking cold, and now it's just like, meh, it's Alberta, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean,
The polar vortex is what got me. We had that like I mean, it's been kind of chilly like this last week or so. And by kind of chilly, I mean like the wind chill was like -20, and it was like high of 9 degrees. Um, then that's Fahrenheit, so that probably I
mhm.
don't know if that means anything to you. Um, but it was like yeah, it was pretty cold. But like a couple of years ago, we had that polar vortex where we had like 4 in 1 year, and it was just like I would go outside with like the dog and just be like, I'm dying. I'm literally like I don't get cold. Like I'm not a super like I get cold easily person, but when I do get cold, I'm like,
It was cold.
this is what the rest of the people feel like, like
So so I remember brandy's a beautiful thing. Like I used
mm,
to, so sometimes I'd come home, take like a shot. It's like, oh my bones, because you can feel it like right in the bones, right from
yeah.
the right. So here's where Michigan is. It has it has it worse off than Alberta. It's the dampness. In fact, it's like a
Mm-hmm.
damp place. So it feels like wet and cold. And
Yeah.
cold and wet by themselves are actually they're fine. But when you combine them, it's
Right.
terrible, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, like when I'm at home, I'm right on Lake Huron and St. Clair River, so it's like we get the lake effect snow. Now we don't get it as bad as like the west side of the state. Like I will say that a lot of the weather comes from the west, but like when we get that like cold breeze from Canada and then all of the snow, it's about like 10 degrees colder for us a lot of times than it is for like the middle of the state. So that that's always fun. Whenever people are like, "Oh, I love snow. It's so pretty," or "I've never seen snow. I wish I could see it," and I'm like, the novelty wears off very quickly because I grew up in Maryland, and so like this, like Maryland does get blizzards and stuff, but like we would get like a half an inch of snow, and they'd be like snow day, because they like never got real
Yeah.
snow, and so I moved to Michigan, and we got like 4 feet of snow, and they still didn't call school off because they're like, oh, you can drive on the roads, it's fine, like so I was like play in the snow, enamored with it for the first year. And then it was like the second year, I was like, yeah, I'll still play in it. And then by the third year, I was like, over it. Like, I was like, 13, 14, and I was just like, no longer holds any charm for me, like, I don't know why I idolized it. I was like, oh, that's just wet and cold. Like you said, like the combination is just like, not my favorite thing because like plus it'd be like now I gotta shovel, like now I gotta like unbury my car, like it's just
The worst is when you got to plug it in to like
yeah.
one of those places just to get the damn thing to warm up. It's like, God damn it, I'm going to be here like 10 minutes longer than I want to be here because.
Right, you gotta plan everything out in advance because it takes like 20 minutes to warm up your car and
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's like, oh God, like why are we doing like Alberta was notoriously bad. So I'm a bus guy. Like I take public transit. Don't hold
oh
it.
good, yeah.
Yeah, but well, Detroit doesn't really have a public transit to speak of.
No, we were the motor city, so why
Yeah,
would we
it's
everyone needs a car, why would we have public? Yeah.
the same thing here actually.
Mm.
It's weird to me because Windsor is a tiny city in comparison to Detroit. But that's the one aspect of Detroit it kept. It's like, no, our bus service is going to be terrible no matter what. And you're like, you look around and you're like, what would make more sense if you actually linked all your little small cities around Windsor together
Right.
with the bus system. Because one, it would make it easier for everybody to get to. Two, not that big. It could actually it would make everything like a little bit more kosher than driving on the expressways and the 401. So no, not zip zero. The only city I've understood that didn't have a bus system was LA, because LA is, oh my god, like you did no, like that whole, whoever designed the infrastructure to Los Angeles, I want to know what your drugs were, because the LA is completely linked by their highway system. So you want to go from anywhere in LA, you're going through their highways, and it's like you need a car. Like, there's not an argument. You just need a car.
Yeah.
You're going to be eternally frustrated in that city in your car, but your car in LA, because there's just no way. Like, there's.
Yeah, and Michigan is often in the same situation, because, like, you know, we were building the cars, so the goal was that everyone in the state would have a car, so like we didn't worry about public transportation, you know. So it was like, yeah, everyone have a car, we don't need public transport, we want to encourage cars. When I went to South Korea, I stayed in Seoul for like a month and a half, and it was like they had the best public transit. It is super clean. It was like all designed in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, like the subway system and stuff. So it's like the most efficient. It's like the best. And it's like, it's just like, it's amazing. Like, I rode the subway in New York City, and then I rode the subway in Seoul, and I was just like, it's a whole different world here. Like I said, it's like sparkling clean. It's like you can't get lost. Like, there's no way. Like, it's so well designed.
That's what I miss about Vancouver. The bus was I still have my bus card from Vancouver, because I never know. So they have like a tap where you just put in money and you can ride the ride.
Yeah, that's what they do. I just have a little keychain thing.
So I still have it, because one, it's a great way to travel in Vancouver while you're in Vancouver, and two, right? Honestly, it was such an efficient system. I do like it slows down after midnight. But in fact, you can still go anywhere in the city practically you want to, right? Even into the wee hours of the morning when the sky trains are done. It was an incredible thing. I really dug. I just dug that part of the city. I mean, there are parts of Vancouver I don't miss, but that part is like, wow, if only every city was like this. But that's not it.
Yeah. It's just like when something is like well planned and well thought through, and you're just like, oh, why isn't it like this everywhere? Because it's so awesome. Seoul was an amazing experience. I just wish I had known more Korean at the time. Because I actually didn't learn, I didn't grow up speaking Korean with my family. My sister was like a honeymoon baby, so she was like learning English when my mom was still learning English. And so one of her teachers had really discouraged my mom from teaching Korean. And it was the 80s or the 90s. They didn't really understand language development. And they're like, oh, she'll never be good at English if you teach her Korean. And that is such that's such BS, and I'm so mad, because like I wanted to learn it like so bad growing up, but I was able to start learning it in college. And like I went to South Korea because everyone was like, you have to make that trip, and I was like, I only could like introduce myself in Korean at the time, and so it was just like, I mean, everyone in Seoul basically knows English anyways, so you can definitely get by. But I was just like, if I had known more Korean at the time, I think it would just been like a whole different experience for sure.
Oh, totally. No, although it's still an interesting one, because which you do make like some lifelong, friends, right? You really, really do. Like, there's that ability to, like, there's that lifelong ability to, what's the term? Make that connection where it's like, I have this broken English connection. It's like, so listen, how do you say this? And it's great, actually, because you make some cool lifelong friends. So for me, I always try to learn the swear words first, for two reasons, right? Two reasons. One, it gives like this impish grin. Like, you can tell what kind of person it is you're dealing with by asking that question. You get the on the front, you're probably not going to want to learn from them anyway. Although they might know all the correct words, they're going to be very like. I find people that really stick to formalities to such an extreme that it borderlines anything else that's fun in their personality. There's a place for it, but it shouldn't be an everyday thing. So the people that kind of go, but they give you like this impish grin, like it's like okay, we're gonna have a connection here one way or the other, and then they'll teach you a word or they'll teach you something, and it's almost like a quick bonus form like that, and then suddenly you start having this conversation in like their broken English and your broken whatever, and the next thing you know, you've made a friend that you never would have made any other way. Now, that doesn't mean you don't try to learn the language. Like when I go to Montreal at some point, I'm going to brush up on my French. Je parle comme ci, comme ça. I haven't spoken the language in such a long time that I know there's so much I've forgotten that I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to brush this up. So I can go there. I can at least sound. I'll sound like a dumb tourist at the very least, with a dumb tourist that's trying, right?
Right. It's the effort. Yeah.
No, effort goes a long way. Like I've learned this with everybody. If you make a genuine effort, people respect that. They don't necessarily. Again, you can fail miserably. That doesn't matter. The fact that you as I've gotten older / wiser, both let other people figure that one out. I recognize the fact that effort really matters. Like effort really like pushes people in really important ways, because people see you trying, really giving a crap. There is something to be said about the effort and energy and output, and people respect that. Like people really respect that, and they'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you otherwise wouldn't have had any other way. And I've learned that this is a very valuable tool to break the ice with anybody. So I mean, yeah, it sucks you didn't know the language on one hand, but I bet you still know some of the people from over there, and you're like, yeah.
I was so proud. Like the one day, an older lady was in the subway system, and she was like, "Where's the station?" And I was able to understand her and actually tell them, like, "Oh, it's the next stop. Just get on this line, like this one." And I was like, I gave so many directions in Korean. You know what I mean? Like I was so proud of myself. I was like glowing for like the next 2 days. Just like I gave so many directions in Korean. So it was like super exciting. Yeah, that's the thing. Like that you were talking about, you've lost a lot of French. I feel like I'm losing a lot of like Korean. Like, so I've started doing like Duolingo and like joining Discords where people speak Korean and like practice Korean, because I'm like, I really don't want to lose the language, because like I can speak to my mom in Korean, but like my sister doesn't know it as well. So she knows like a little bit and she can like understand some stuff, but like I obviously like don't want to go on and on in conversation with my mom, and my sister just sitting there like, what are you guys talking about?
I grew up. My grandmother would talk to my dad in Maltese. I didn't know Maltese. Like right. So, but you learn more than you think, right? Right? Because my grandmother would go, "Oh no, you don't know." It's like, "Oh no." My grandmother.
Yeah.
No, my grandmother. In her case, she swore like a sailor. Maltese and the Arabic tongue in particular.
Okay.
You can tell when someone's cursing. It's just the way it comes out. It's undeniable. Like you can hear it.
Right.
You may not know exactly but you know it's bad, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Growing up, I definitely knew that. Like certain tone. My mom's, she's swearing at me. She's calling me something. I don't know quite what, but yeah.
You don't really like I said. Some things are universal, so you don't really need to know exactly what. Now, to be fair. The Arabic cursing is also Israeli cursing. I actually found out that I found that out by I was interviewing a guest actually from Israel, and we just Raj Khan. So it's like one of my favorite swear words from my grandmother. I said it to her. Yeah, no, cursing really doesn't need any translation. It true. Actually, I'm gonna slightly disagree with you. It depends on the language. Most languages, there's usually a dead giveaway. French is actually kind of hard. Like French, you don't always hear it, right?
Okay.
You don't always hear it in French. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. But their language is just flowery enough, even in their curses, that you're like, ah. Now,
Right.
that'll said more often than not, you can definitely hear it, and when you do, it's glorious, especially when they try to deny it, especially when they like try to absolutely deny that.
Yeah, I was like 16, and my mom said, she said a swear word. I knew the swear word, so I just repeated it, and she's like, "Don't say that." Oh my god! Like, and I was like, "Why, Mom? What does it mean, Mom? Like, is it a bad word, Mom?" And so I like wrote it down. Like, I gotta remember this word because I was that rebel without a cause.
So for me, it was high school. I had some friends who were Arabic. And I worked for a laundromat with a bunch of Arabic employees, so I got to learn some Arabic curse, like other Arabic curses as well. So they wanted me to say "I speak," which is very, very bad, right? And then, but I know the rest of it, and so I just not only did I say that, I continued it. It's like, right, because I know I
Like,
use the
oh
word,
my god, yeah,
right? Like so, and that also forms a really cool connection because, like, again, human nature is universal in some ways. It's like I can make you say something stupid. Heck, we did that in elementary school with like kids younger than us. We tried to get them to say stupid shit because we could. And this way with what we did and what we done, it's like now it's like, okay, now it's just coming out. You're seeing it around the world. Like it doesn't matter where you go and how you go about it. We all have a similar perverse sense of humor. I bet you I can make them say something stupid. So yeah, you can.
Well, like, it's still a little taboo for like women to like swear in Korean. So like when you do hear a woman swear in Korean, then it's like you are in trouble because they don't do it lightly. They'll just be like, "Are you sure you want me to say this? How I'm really feeling?" And then they'll just like unleash on you. But yeah, it was funny because like my sister like does understand a lot more words than she can like say, and but I was like one time I was just like, "Hey, go say like tell this to Mom," and I told her to, like a swear word and she didn't know what it meant, and so she just like walks around and she's like, "What's da 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 da?" And my mom was like and I was just laughing hysterically in the kitchen, like overhearing, and my sister's like, "What did I say?" And then she's like, "Julia."
Like it's universal. Like we all have that, and especially siblings. Oh god, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh god, yeah.
I love the sibling memes where it's like, you know, you're ready to kill each other, and then 10 seconds later, like, "You want to order pizza?" Like, heck yeah! Like, here's
no,
watch a movie. Yeah.
See, the true nature of love. I really feel this. How I know someone actually truly loves you, they will steal your food. Sounds really, 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 really simple, but the thing is, they can bring out some of their more like some of their more idiosyncratic behaviors, right? Some of the stuff that they may not be so comfortable with strangers talking about, but they do it with you.
Right.
Well, like when you go like watch teachers with troubled students, one of the things is those troubled students are acting out because they feel in a place that they're comfortable enough to act out, and they feel
that person's safe to them, so they can.
Right, exactly. Same thing with people you love. Yeah, we should not treat our loved ones like garbage. That's not what I'm saying. But we all have that point in ourselves where it's just like, okay, I can do this with you because you're you and you love me and you understand me and I'm safe to do this with you. Right. Those are the healthiest relationships, actually, right? Because they tend to be like as I've gotten older, like now, I mean, me and my dad argue a lot more now that we're older because I'm my own guy. He's his own man, and we're not not quite the same father-son dynamic anymore. It's two men having a discussion, and we will disagree about some stuff through the roof. On other ends of the spectrum, though, we're hearing each other out. It's the other thing as well. We're hearing each other out. We're understanding things, and he trusts me enough to be this way with me because he can't necessarily do this with anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Vice versa, right? We can be combative with each other because we love each other, and it's an interesting dichotomy to a relationship. Is any kind of relationship you have, it's not if you can be good with somebody. You should treat someone good, but that's not the question. The question is it okay for you to be silly? Is it okay for you to, walk around in like this awkward, awkward shirt because fuck it, right? This is what I feel like today.
Right.
Can I tease you? Can I torment you? In not like I'm trying to torture you kind of way, but like, can I tackle you? Can I make you uncomfortable, but in a playful way? And
Right.
those are the best ones, and they're hard to find. Like those are the hardest relationships to cultivate in the world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm a very like goofy person. But it's like, you feel comfortable with someone when you're just like, yeah, I'm just like singing songs, like I'm just like narrating what I'm doing in song verse, you know what I mean? And just like being like the silliest thing ever, and just like that's how I feel comfortable with you. I'm just randomly singing a song while I'm like cooking dinner.
What's your song of choice? Like, what, do you say any particular song, or is it like?
Oh no, it'll be like it like I mean I do like silly things where I just will like be like just like doobie doobie doo and like making up sounds like when I'm singing, but like I will like narrate what I'm doing. Like me and my boyfriend were shopping and he's like running through, like he's like walking quickly through the aisles, like dodging people left and right, and I was like, he's a stealth ninja when he shops, and like I was narrating like what he was doing. Just like he moves left and right and runs down this aisle before someone gets here, and I'm like, stealth ninja, shopping like a stealth ninja, like that kind of thing. I just get really goofy, but like the people that love me, they're just like, okay, she's just singing to herself. It's fine.
No, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's the see. Right. I don't want, like, God forbid we all think and act the same. God, like that would be hell. Like honestly, that would truly be hell. You do that too, Jay? Yeah, that's cool. So do you like? So I'm gonna ask AF a question, then we're gonna come back to this point. So AF, do you do like commentary? When you do commentary, is it like me? The silent but deadly commentary as they skull across the planet, or is it like the animated when they're off to the races and here we go, blah, 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 blah. I as you can see, I'm very silly myself.
Yeah. You like doing that documentary style where it's like David Attenborough watching like the wildlife,
Yeah, right. No, it's totally because that can be like, that's hilarious, especially in like a grocery store or in like I sing like that's totally cool.
Yeah, totally. Like there's something about like putting it into song, and like I love playing with words. Yeah, obviously I'm a writer and an editor, and so like I'll just be like making up rhymes as I go, like not rapping because like I'm not a rapper, but like like I was singing a silly song and like just like if this was a jingle, like how do I make it rhyme? Like that's like part of the fun.
It's not far away from rapping though. I mean, I say that as a compliment. It's not that far. Like I'm as a purely from a lyrics point of view, I think that's genius. Like I think he's absolutely a genius. And one of the things he does is he does a lot of clever word plays. His favorite is double entendre. Like he loves doing entendres a lot in his singing and rhyming and his structure, because it evokes so many different images in one. And his best songs are usually incorporate this on all kinds of levels. Like I really dug the song "The Darkness" from last year. It was just, he did such a wonderful job of the gunner and him about to go on stage, and he painted them like in such, he told such a compelling story that although the song content is horrifying, right? But I mean, because again, he had something worth saying. He had something that came from a really, really, really good place, and it added such a layer. It added such a layer to. It adds so much layers to his work. I think honestly, Julia, you might be a rapper deep down inside you. Maybe not Eminem. We can't call you.
Yeah, rappers are like geniuses. Like the way that they structure their that they inherently are doing like this meter and this rhythm and like and the rhymes and the wordplay and like all of this stuff and they do it on the fly. Like it, like those people that can just sit there and be like, give me a word, and then they just start rapping, and it's just like, you are like a word genius, like literally. So I'm like, if I could be a rapper, I would totally be like, yeah, I'm so smart, look at me play with words, but I'm just like, let me like take an hour to craft a sentence.
Well, that's okay. But that's practice, right? Like
Right, yeah,
right, that's practice. Like that's not
yeah,
like
totally.
I mean, we all play with words, and so like I play with words all the time. Actually, what I've come to the point with my stuff is I'm starting to see the levels to it, like what the different things I can do. I don't know if you've watched me illustrate stuff, but if you have, it's like I every time. So the my education as an artist, as an writer, illustrator, podcaster, all that stuff is that everything I'm doing is kind of giving me like all this extra languages, right? Right, or if not extra languages, extra words. So suddenly now I can look at a story I'm writing and I can see it on just levels I never would have imagined before because
Right.
I've done more stuff and more stuff I do. It's like so my challenge is now to keep it simple because if I don't keep it simple, I'm gonna get lost in all the wonderful little mazes of what I could and couldn't do. It's like that's great, but that doesn't like you don't write anything when you do that, right? You're just like
Right. You don't want to get too meta in your brain where you're just like, do I want to do this through showing this through this metaphor? And then you just like break it down too much. Yeah.
whereas like so what I do is when I plot now, it's like okay, I'm finishing. I'm going to try to finish Lights Out, which is my next release this weekend. I'm trying to finish it. The written part. Then I start illustrating it, which is going to be fun. I'm playing with I'm playing with binary numbers and skulls and bones and trees. That's literally what I'm doing for the.
I love drawing trees. I love drawing trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the end of the. So this is my homage to Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov, but like obviously, put my Bradbury was especially was like Asimov was prolific and in terms of by the time he got to the end of his career, he was an amazing writer. His early stuff doesn't stand up as well. There are some exceptions, but it doesn't stand up. But his later stuff is amazing, and especially his nonfiction. His nonfiction is incredible. But one of the things I realized is like, well, I can tell a story now with a bunch of different things. I have this theme of darkness and shining a light in the darkness kind of deal. So I'm playing with, so it's like I can do this storytelling wise, right? I have an idea of what the metaphors and the story I'm trying to convey. I'm trying to keep it within a certain context. The illustrations are another context that adds to the story. It also saves me from the thing about doing a podcast like this. I hear when words like audiobook words. I hear when like audiobooks aren't necessarily designed to be read, right? Because again, we use description is such a big part of novels, especially, and I feel like that we're gonna as we evolve into merging mediums in the future, we're going to be playing with the concept of okay, what medium serves the story best, and how can I tell it, and how does it translate here, here, and here to get the maximum impact of telling the story. We're starting to play with that, but we haven't really gone all in on that yet. And and I think that's the next decade. We're going to be playing with that a lot more to get to that, because that's the cool thing. Like so, for me with this story, so it's like okay, so this translates visually. Now I want to translate the best. What's the best for the sound? What's the best for like? And I'm thinking in these terms now, and I never did before. Is that weird?
No, I don't think that's weird at all. Like, I think the most successful like adaptations when you talk about like going from a book to a movie are things that keep the essence, the spirit of the story. Don't add like unnecessary like quests or stuff like that, but also recognize that like they are a different medium and they are doing it they have to do it differently. Like my favorite adaptation is Howl's Moving Castle. So amazing book by Diana Wynne Jones, and then Hayao Miyazaki makes this gorgeously rendered, beautiful animated motion picture of Howl's Moving Castle. And they Pixar partnered with Studio Ghibli to make the English version, where they were like very true to the original language, but they made it in English, so it's easier for American audiences to watch and absorb and just really enjoy without subtitles. Even though I love subtitles, but they are two different stories. Like Miyazaki took the original story and he was like, here's the heart of it, here's the essence, here's what it's about. And so he made it about the same themes, but he wasn't like tied to keeping everything exactly the same. Like, the Merkel character, he made a little kid instead of being a teenage boy, and he changed some other stuff. But it's like, I love them both equally, but like for different reasons.
Yeah, they were serving different mediums determine how the story's told. I did a music video once upon a time with one of my chapters from The Watcher. So I told the story like from a modern take, and I'm like, wow, I can tell the story in a completely different way here. It doesn't look anything like the story I actually wrote in the poem at all.
Right.
But on the meta level, it's the same story, and I just realized that it was like, oh wow, I learned something very valuable. So now when I think about story structure in particular, I realize it's basically we're saying the same things. The challenge is what's the best way to say this thing in this place.
Right.
And that's the nature of language, and that's the nature of medium, and that's the nature of story ultimately. We're all saying the same stuff. Now it's about, okay, how do we best tell those stories?
I think we have to be careful though, when moving to a different medium, that we don't apply some of like the formulaic aspects of like for instance, like adaptations that like don't do it right, like the Percy Jackson series, right? So Percy Jackson, amazing book. And then they're like, and there's already quests in the book. There's already like, we got to do this. We got to, stop Ares. We got to do, whatever. And for the movies, they're like, oh, let's throw in these like random pearls, or like, let's throw in this random like quest where they have to like go across the country to do this. But it's like, why not, stick with what the book was like really trying to do, which is like have X problem, solve it, and go from there, and like figure out what's going on in the background after you, like while you're working through solving problem X. And I feel like because it was like, oh, it's a movie, we've got to make it, follow this kind of formula, they were like, well, we're going to add in this quest, and we're going to, or even like the Divergent series where they're like, we got to make a box. Like, there was already stuff going on in the book that you could have like that would have flowed better, and I think the audience would have appreciated it more if it had stuck more to the books, in those cases.
I didn't mind Divergent so much. I thought they were pretty on point with the basic concepts. I think where they sold it short was 4, actually, because he is such an interesting character, and actually in many ways his arc is in that series, I think, much more compelling than the main characters, actually, because he's not quite what she was, but right, but his vulnerabilities, the fact that he was such an enclosed system for the longest time, she opened him up in like a really good, cool way. So when we get to the last book in the series in particular, it's more about him than her. Like her end. We're spoiling. I'm spoiling Divergent, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm sorry.
It's been out for years. Yeah.
But the ending of that was, I thought, really, really, really interesting, because what they did was, when she dies, it's all about him. It's the rest of him. And then you go back and you look at the previous books. In a lot of ways, they're all, other than I'd say the second book's The Insurgent is the only one that's really about her. But the first one and the last one are as much about Thor as it is about her, right? And you realize, like, okay, that's what they needed more of in the actual movie, because he ends the book, right? And it's the impact she made in his life that made what happens to him afterwards everlasting. And that to me is that's to me the most interesting part of that story. And they left that out. Again, looking back, they were trying. Hollywood has this weird thing with young adult books in particular.
Yeah.
Harry Potter or Hunger Games. Hunger Games was really close to the book. It wasn't quite that bright, but it was close. Like, that's a pretty good adaptation of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. I actually, in some ways, I think the movies were better in some ways.
Well, they were so cinematography, like the cinematography of like how they when they made the people from the Capitol, they went all out with the visuals. They went all out with like the aesthetic, and I really appreciate that. And that's what you're saying, with a different medium, you tell the story in a different way. And I feel like the Hunger Games movie does it really well, that they're like, this is a primarily visual medium. We can really take the creativity and like really plan the aesthetic and what we are, like the world building into the visuals, and it works so well.
Snow's amazing. Like his whole place design, the actor, like everything with that was incredible. But I think if you had to give me a choice between the books and the movie, that one I would actually choose the movies. I think they do a better job of telling that whole story. Some of the stuff in the books that was missed was interesting, but not to the degree that I missed it. Like Harry Potter, there are some things missing.
Right.
But that part, you kind of understood it, because you got the sense with Harry Potter that it was just too big to put. Like they just
there's just too much to it.
Yeah, it's too much. Like just in the movie setting, I was just really. But they were very true to the vision of Harry Potter. The story was super consistent the whole way through, and the movies they complement the books, right? That's how I feel like. Whereas I think in Hunger Games, the movies are actually a little better than the books. That's just my opinion. That's my opinion. Don't come after me. Julia is the first in line on that. But that's kind of where that's kind of how I see it. That's kind of how I look at that. But with a lot of other ones, what happens is it's like, okay, the worst one for me is Aragon. And I say this because I know if I were to interview Christopher Paolini, he probably would have a drink with him when he talked about the movie, because he'd have to, because Lord knows, looking at that, you're like, what the hell happened there? But you recognize too, what tends to happen in movies are creative industry. Like they really are a creative industry. The challenge when you translate a movie, and by the way, this is for anybody that gets into the adaptation business, understand this: the more successful your books or your properties are, the harder it is for them to change it. Right. But in that murky middle ground of you're successful but not as successful as some of the other ones,
right,
more likely, right, to be messed with. That's why hence Percy Jackson. Rick Riordan has done a fantastic job with that series, and it's a great. Honestly, I think it'd be an amazing television show. I think that's where that would really shine.
Right.
But he's not Hunger Games. He's not Harry Potter. He's not those series. Divergent. As much as I like that run, it's not those two either. It's a good series, but it's not that. So. Twilight. That's why Twilight also was able, like, as much as people like crap on the books now, right? The fact of the matter is, it's a very true to form adaptation. If you watch it on the screen, it's pretty accurate, actually, right? So, and the reason being is they couldn't mess it up. Too many people had read it, and too many people would be like, "Well, what about this?" What you don't want to mess up a franchise that's going to make you a ton of money. That's why when you look at the Marvel movies, like the ultimate example of this, they're not going to mess that up. They know what they're doing. They know that, frankly, that they're not going to, like, there's too much money to screw
Right.
Go down with that. You're not going to do that, right? Disney's also incredibly smart to let Marvel do its own thing because that's just like, here's the money. You're making us money. We're backing off. You look at the DC adaptations, like DC does some great television and especially animated, like some amazingly good animated adaptations. But their movies are terrible by and large because the characters.
Well, my sister and I were actually discussing this the other day because I watched Wonder Woman, the new Wonder Woman, and
I haven't seen it yet. I want to, but I haven't seen it yet.
I was pretty I did not have the strong reaction that a lot of people I seem to know had. Like a lot of people seem to be really like they did not like it at all, and I think it was because like the first movie was so charming that it's hard to follow that up. But like what we were discussing, where it seems to be why Marvel does so well and DC seems to kind of fall flat a lot more, is because there's the conflict seems to be missing. Like the characters are so powerful. Like think about Superman. Like Superman is so powerful. He has one vulnerability, and it's kind of like, it's like reading a Mary Sue where you're just like, oh, they're perfect and they're so strong and they're invincible. Like, why do I need to read about what's going to happen? They're going to win in the end, right? So it's like, big part of what drives a story is conflict. So like, even though you have like really strong characters and superheroes in the Marvel universe, like Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man, he gets PTSD, and that like messes him up to where it affects his fighting and it affects his daily life. And then, so we get conflict built into the story because there's these vulnerabilities, there's these flaws, and with the problem with Wonder Woman, it was just like the conflict seemed like it was kind of like not really there / forced there, and so it was a good movie, but it didn't have that magical wow factor that you really get from some other movies.
So Wonder Woman was an interesting challenge, and this is what I mean by that. When she's written well,
yes,
she's phenomenal. Like actually, like some of my favorite comic runs are Wonder Woman runs.
Okay.
George Perez did a phenomenal job with Diana Prince, and so did. I just read Greg Rucka's and Liam Sharp's run with Wonder Woman, and there's another artist that was part of that too.
Okay.
They did a 24-issue run that stands up incredibly well. The problem with Wonder Woman as a character is she's not as elastic as say Batman is.
Right.
Okay? Batman, you can put Batman in any environment. He's been in every environment. He's been in outer space. He's been on Earth. He's been here. He's been there. And the fact of the matter is, he fits. You can make look. As much as we all laugh at the Adam West Batman, there's an appeal to it because it's fun. It's Batman in a fun environment that actually tends to. Are you there? Okay, you got there. Okay, making sure because it's almost like you froze for a second. Oh no! But Batman can literally. You can put Batman in the future, past. Wonder Woman it's not even so much her power set. Like she's on par with Thor. Like she's on par with Thor. Thor is not a lightweight by any stretch of the imagination. But the thing about Thor, what Marvel did was, okay, the first movie, although arguably, no, it's not the worst one. The worst one's Dark World. The Dark World is terrible. I won't deny it. It's I love Thor as a character, but the Dark World is a terrible movie. Although I did love in Avengers Endgame the callback to that was amazing. I love like that actually honestly, that was one of the best love letters to 3 characters I've ever seen. Like, period. But with Thor, they made him a fish out of water. I am this all-powerful, amazing man that cannot. That's never had coffee before, and now injured and shocked. And that was the first movie. A lot of the first movie was the humor in that movie was, "I am Thor, the all-powerful." No. Not here, you're not. Here, you're just another man. But that was interesting because it forced him to grow. Dark World, whatever. But the third movie, they went back to that to some degree because they made him a fish out of water again. They put him in a situation where he was on the outside looking in. It wasn't the same. The third movie is the best one of the series. Partly because of the buddy comedy with the Hulk was awesome. I love that. That was great.
I love it.
Yeah, that was great. But the other part that made it really good was you got to see Thor grow. Thor had become like my favorite scene is actually when he tricks Loki. That's my favorite scene in the whole movie because it shows how far he has come as a character, because Loki tricks him in the first movie and he fell for it. This time around, it was like, no, I got you. And then he goes and he has a real talk. He doesn't talk to his brother. He goes, look, you, for whatever reason, have not changed. I have gone through so many changes, and he wasn't even done changing in that movie. This was such a wonderful. You saw the difference because here he is going to his brother. It's like, I've been through all of this. You've been through all this, and I love you enough to tell you you could be so much better than you are.
Yeah, there's still an emotional immaturity that was left.
Yeah, it was an incredible. Thor had come such a long way from when he started, and you could see the growth. Here's the problem with Superman. Okay, Superman's difficult. Is a bigger. There is a solution. Unfortunately, they did it with Shazam. Unfortunately, I don't think you can do that with Superman anymore. You've done it with Shazam. But the solution with Wonder Woman is recognize where she can grow. Wherever that growth actually is. For her, she's all about the pursuit of truth and love in a world that would ultimately shuns these things. So that's where you can tell some really interesting stories with her, because what does she do? Like when she deals with her own self-deceptions, her own perceptions of how the world works, throw them on their head. That's where she's also a fish out of water. Right? You're trying to save the world. Well, what world are you saving? That's conflict. That's her real conflict. And the first movie,
I feel like they could have definitely explored that in the second movie. But they kind of were just like, let's go for, like I said, it kind of felt like they were trying to go for more like conventional conflict. But I love what you're saying about characters evolving and like how this makes a difference. Looking at like what you're saying about Marvel characters evolving, they're more like a series where you have a character that starts out very flawed, very immature in some way or another, and they go through their story, they go through their character arc, and they grow and they evolve, and we love them more in the end because they have changed and they have grown, and we see their journey and we're just like, oh, we were there for it. DC characters are like the serials, where it's like Sherlock Holmes is always Sherlock Holmes, and he's always going to be, this kind of, character that, we love and admire his like intelligence and his reasoning skills and his kind of wittiness that he has. But there's always going to be that lackingness too, because we have, so many stories about Sherlock Holmes and he doesn't change. Like, and I feel like what you're saying is like with Superman is like, Superman is kind of always like the same kind of idealistic character. He doesn't really have a huge evolution.
It's not even okay. So Silver Age Superman is my favorite Superman because they decided, screw it, we're gonna have fun. Jimmy Olsen became a monster every other week. There's the Battle City of Kandar. His people were shrunk to the size of a bottle. The Phantom Zone. You have like his history with Krypton. You have, him just dealing with like a date with Lois Lane, following him arm wrestling Herculean gods just for shits and giggles. And Lois Lane is a super woman at the same way. That's All-Star Superman. For anybody that has not read that, that is literally the best Superman story you will read inside the last 20 years. Easy. But so Superman's conflicts aren't necessarily about him as a person. His conflicts should be either one of two things. I'm having fun, which is why I said Shazam. That's why Shazam works. I actually like Shazam as a movie.
Okay.
Billy Bats, a kid that says a magic world and suddenly can stop everything and be a superhero. That is fun. I don't care. Like, that should be fun. I don't care who's doing it. They were very smart not to put Black Adam in the first movie, because Black Adam is the adult version of Shazam, and you shouldn't introduce a character as complex as Black Adam until you establish Billy Batson, because that is important. And they were smart not to do that. I cannot wait for The Rock to be, because Rock would have played a really good Captain Marvel, but he's going to play a really, really great Black Adam. And I know that because Black Adam is a very complex character.
Mm-hmm.
That all said, so the fun option is kind of being taken by Shazam. So what you do with Superman then is this. You have all this power.
Right.
What put him in situations where it does him no good.
Right.
And there are situations where it doesn't do him any good. They don't do that because that's where he's at his most human. Because now he's like, I can't fix this. I don't know how to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do? Real questions that plague us. You give Superman really adult problems, things that don't have a clear black and white solution, and suddenly this character becomes much. I've said this with me. My idealism isn't actually idealism from the sense of there's a very pragmatic side to my idealism. I recognize that for me, I have no clue what the real world is, and I refuse to be a pessimist. I'm too old for that shit. And so I'm going to be an optimist because it's a great survival mechanism. It always lets me figure things out, take on any challenge that comes my way, and I can grow from that. That's what you do with Superman, something like that. Like you make him an idealist, but don't shy away from the gravity of situations as well. That's the thing with Superman. Like you don't make him stop a bank robbery. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares about that? You put him in a situation where it's like, okay, the sun is killing us. How do you fix that? Be Superman. Like give him like super problems, right? Right? Give him things that make him, because he's a farm boy from Kansas. Like seriously, that's what he is. Like he's a farm boy from Kansas. So let him be a farm boy from Kansas. How does a farm boy approach the problems of the world, some of the bigger problems? That's who he is as a human being, right? But again, you don't. Yeah, he's got all this power. So you take it away from him. Not just the trick of land of kryptonite. No. I don't care how strong you are, how fast you are. There's nothing you can do. That is truly interesting. That's challenging. That forces growth. Those are how you create conflict with him.
Yeah, and I think that's what's missing in a lot of
right. But the thing is, now, having said all that, notice what I did with both Superman and Wonder Woman. They're a lot more challenging to create those conflicts because of who they are. They're not as elastic as Batman or Iron Man or Spider-Man. Now, Green Lantern and the Flash, you could do that. They're both, because Green Lantern's a human being with a wishing ring.
Right.
Cool. They could do some cool stuff. Flash is the fastest man alive. He's fun, but he's also, there's a very human element to him as well, even though he is legitimately one of the most powerful characters ever. Right? There's a very human core to him. So those two characters, you could do a lot more elastic things, and that's why the Green Lantern movie in particular makes me very sad, very, 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 very sad. But that's the thing. Like DC's humanity, DC does have characters that could be ultimately very human, but you also got to recognize where they come from too. A lot of these characters are from the 1930s in the pulp dime novel era. They're not going to be.
Where they are the ideal rather than.
Yeah, you're talking about Doc Savage, like the Doc Savage era. Superman's from that era, right? Batman's from that era. Batman was just had the fortune of being a little bit more elastic in concept, right?
Well, he has a backstory. He has a tragedy.
Yeah, but not just. But not, he's a human being. He's a human. He's a human being with all the human flaws and fables that go with it. Yeah, right. So that's the thing about. Like when you look at these characters, that's what you got to look at them, right? Marvel, it's easy. Marvel builds, not only do they build their flaws in, but they tell like the story. Peter Parker's the hero's journey. Captain America is the closest thing they have to a pulp. Like they also a classic pulp hero based on the Dark Savage era. But again, what do they do with him? Fish out of water. He's an archaic man in a modern time, right? He sees the world very differently, and he has to adapt and change to the world. On some level, and maybe in some ways he makes the world adapt and change. Yes, Batman is dysfunctional. Oh, absolutely. He's totally dysfunctional. But Green Lantern's got built-in conflicts too. The Flash is built-in conflicts as well.
That's
right?
why you appreciate those characters so much.
Yeah. And so so that's, you have these, like, even right. That's the challenge. But I have no idea. I have no idea what that was exactly. Oh. Okay. But anyway, no, it's one of those. It's one of those things where you look at it and you recognize the fact that that's the thing. Like, you got to look at these characters. You got to be very honest about who they are and where you can go with them. You got to recognize with Superman and Wonder Woman in particular, there's only so far you can go. Now you can go a little farther with Wonder Woman than you can with Superman.
Right.
But
that's why it's like such a problem to have like the perfect character, those Mary Sue. Not that they're not good characters, but just that they are the ideals. They have, like you said, less to stretch. You know what I mean? Superman's not going to go and do the wrong thing. He's going to do what he believes is morally right.
Or if he does the wrong thing, you have to be very specific as to why. Like, there has to be a reason to break.
He's still going to follow his moral compass, no matter what. And that, I think that's what we love, like the anti-hero. Now, I don't personally love the anti-hero, but as a society, I feel like we really do love the anti-hero, that kind of like the guy who is bad but happens to do the good thing. Perhaps for the wrong reasons. But I love the reluctant hero. That person that is just like, I was a normal, everyday person, and maybe I wanted more in my life, but I didn't necessarily ask to be like the hero and do this great, amazing thing and save everyone. I love that, because you can have the flaws, you can have the vulnerabilities, you can have the doubting, you can have everything that like we as people relate to and really root for and really fall in love with and connect to, without them like having that necessarily like morally gray. Like, if you're a jerk, like, I'm not going to love you as a character, you know what I mean? But like, a lot of people do love the anti-hero, like Loki. How many Loki fans are there out in the world? But like, the reluctant hero, that's where it is for me. That's my sweet spot.
So I say there's 4 kinds of heroes.
Mm-hmm.
King Arthur, which is Superman, Wonder Woman, like they're in the King Arthur realm.
Okay.
Percival, Spider-Man, right? Is the example. I mean, there's others like Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern in particular. That one, like the hero's journey, they grow and become bigger heroes. A lot of like young adult novels are Percival's, almost all of them, right? There's a hero's journey. The Jonahs, which is like almost the reluctant hero. Jonah goes and says, "Hey, listen, I need you to go to Nineveh." Fuck Nineveh, I'm going fishing. Then the whale swallows him whole, and then he ends up there anyway. Which is a great literary example of this is Matt Cawthon of The Wheel of Time. He literally falls asleep in the barn, wakes up in the middle of the battle, right? Because I'm getting out of here. And he wakes up, right? He's like, God damn it, I'm not escaping this. Like, no, it's gonna come to you. That's just how it works. That's how the universe works. So that's the reluctant hero. Like, I find like Flashman's another one, the reluctant hero, and then there's like the trickster, like the anti-hero. The anti-hero is so I feel like the anti-hero thing is, it's like this. I think people like anti-heroes because good anti-heroes show the flaws in our culture, in our society, and a very, like, if you go famous anti-heroes, Robert De Niro's Taxi Driver is probably one of the most famous ones, right? He's an anti-hero, but he's sympathetic because you understand his plight. Robin Hood is the original anti-hero, right? Robs from the rich, gives to the poor. Anti-heroes, by their definition, you cannot have a story filled with anti-heroes. You have to have, you can have shades of gray, but you can't have the you can't have the what's the term? A fully shaded gray character, because what happens is now you kind of cross into this weird noir thing, and noir is not for everybody, right? So you need, when you have an anti-hero as your protagonist, or they can even be unlikable. They don't have to be a like character. They have to have a good villain always realizes where they're right, especially because they might have a point to what they do. An
Mhm.
anti-hero has a similar vein. There's a very fine line though. The villain and the anti-hero both believe they are right, but the
Right.
anti-hero is on a journey either to make something right, even
Mhm.
if it means they use nefarious means to get there, because the world seems to be a nefarious place at the best of times,
Mhm.
or they become the villain. At some point,
Right.
they become the true villain of the story. There's no middle ground. They either go one way or the other, right? A good
Mhm.
Les Miserables, Jean Valjean, great anti-hero, right? Right,
Right.
right, a great anti-hero. He became quote unquote a good person, and the inspector, who was kind of a good person by like going for a good moral upstanding, became the villain
Right.
time again on in the story, because of their positions. People understand, like especially in a time like this, for example, where people are losing their jobs, people are being put in some very inhumane things right now because it's been a very cruel time.
Mhm.
As a result, an anti-hero becomes very sympathetic, especially if they point out all the flaws and hypocrisy
Mhm.
going on right now. Right? If you can
Yeah.
point that out, it's gonna resonate because people
Mhm.
are gonna say, he's right. He's absolutely right. Now it doesn't mean his actions are right. It doesn't mean that that what he or she does
Mhm.
is justified. That's a different
Right.
question.
Mhm.
But that's where anti-heroes serve as a important like part of any story building. It's simply the fact is they exist because in our culture where our imperfections are very glaringly obvious,
Mhm.
that's where they reside.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they're not anti-heroes, they're villains. No
Yeah.
matter how good they are, they're villains. I think the best example of a villain that was so good he didn't realize it was Gul Dukat of DS9. He was a monster the
Mhm.
whole series. He was charming, he was witty, he
Right.
some humanity and compassion to him. He wasn't one dimensional at all, not until the
Mhm.
very end of the series, very end of the series. But that journey for him was always going to be that journey for him. There was no other place for him to go
Right.
because of just who he could not accept where he was truly the bad guy. Right? He
Mhm.
tried to justify it always. Oh yeah, no, Ducat was the absolute one of the best villains ever because he was so the and this is also credit to the actor Marco Lamo.
Mm.
He was so good at being that character. He could make you believe that
Mhm.
he's really a good guy, and that's the scariest villain of all. Actually,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's the scariest villain of all, and that like, but again, he could have been an anti-hero. There was definitely parts in that series where if they had wanted to go that way, they could have. But because he never could acknowledge his own faults, his own flaws as a human
Right.
being, or as a being anyway, his own flaws as a character, he never could reform. He never
Mhm.
could,
Mhm.
and inevitably. Now again, we get to the end of the series, he's a lot more one dimensional. But at that point, um, hey, look, I got spammed. Anyway,
I know. I'm just like,
yeah,
comment. Yeah.
but 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 at that point, you've been through that whole journey. There was
Right.
nowhere else for him to go. He had to become the mustache twirling villain at the end of the series because that was where his arc was, and someone had to stop him, and someone did, and voila, end of the series, right? And
I
that's
just
why.
like it's it's just like a personal thing for me. Like if someone is just like a jerk, like I read Gone with the Wind and like middle school, and I was just seething the whole book. Like you think, like you watch the movie and you're like, oh wow, Scarlett O'Hara is such a bee, right? You're just like, she's just a biatch. She's the biggest, meanest person in the whole entire world that ever existed. And then you read the book and you have her thoughts, and you're just like, oh my god, like I wanted to like throw the book at the wall so many times because I was like, how can someone be like that much of a jerk? Like, and just like think that that's okay. And like, I was just like, I am not sympathetic to her plight at all. Like, no, honey, no. And so, like, for me, like, the anti-hero, like, kind of like walks that line of like, are that like, it's to me, like what I love is that you may be flawed, you may make, of course you'll make mistakes, right? It's not about not making mistakes, it's not about being perfect or always doing the right thing. It's about like what motivates you, and like it's about like in the end you won't intentionally just be like, yeah, I'm going to cause somebody's death, or I'm going to cause somebody's misery, or I'm going to do something that's like morally reprehensible because it benefits me. Like to me, I'm just like at that point, I'm like, oh, that's. It's not that they're not redeemable. It's just that I'm like, I no longer feel like that's close connection that I get with characters, for someone like that. Cause I'm just like, you're just a jerk and you can be a jerk at any time. And like, you're just okay with that, and I'm just like that. I just don't relate to that. I know it's more interesting. I know it's definitely like makes for an interesting character to be like, will they, won't they do the right thing, or will they, won't they do what like is better for them?
So I'm writing a pulp story right now, parallel universe story. My main character Corey's got some serious flaws, especially when she starts. You see where she came from. She had drug problems. She had other very, very various issues that kind of came to like a rock bottom point.
Mm-hmm.
But going forward, like in the series, she struggles with some of those things. Like I because I think there's it's unrealistic. I know what my flaws are. At least a few of my flaws. I'm not gonna say I know them all.
Right.
Because I'm not that omnipotent, and I certainly don't pretend that I know everything.
Right.
No matter what anybody will have you believe. But the thing is, even knowing my flaws, it's hard to change sometimes. And I recognize like that's a really human thing. We all know we should maybe not eat those sugary donuts every day, but we still like that sugary donut. That's a small sample. But okay, as a character flaw, like a personal one, I get really offended when people outright lie to me. I get really like very. Like, it's to the point where I'm almost a bitch, and I can acknowledge this, right? Even though I'm older and wiser and can understand that to some degree a little bit more, and I'm more forget, I still struggle with that. I don't always have that. I don't always have that lidded the way I should. And I've made mistakes as a result of this. I understand that. It's my flaw. I don't have a good answer all the time. And even when I know I'm in the wrong, I still sometimes just fuck up. Like that's I think that's the thing with my character, like with Corey. She fucks up.
Right, but what are her motivations though? Like it's not because she's like motivated to do the wrong thing because it benefits her. She just has a flaw. Sometimes. Okay.
Sometimes.
I mean, I guess like, and I'm not trying to get on like a soapbox or a moral high point or anything.
We're just doing the shit here. We're having fun.
Yeah. For me, okay. So for me, like, I'm bipolar, right? So I know that naturally my emotions can be like they're not always obviously, but they can be more exaggerated, or my thinking could be more irrational because I'm affected by brain chemicals and everything else that's going on in my body and my head. And so like knowing that, I try so hard to kind of overcorrect that and be like, I'm going to put like, it's like a system of checks and balances for myself and my personality, where I'm like, I have trusted friends and I'm like, if I get super mad about something, I'll be like, hey, so this is a situation, this is what happened, this is what I did, this is what they did. Am I being irrational, or am I overreacting, or like, how would you feel in the situation? Because this is how I feel, but I might be reacting too strongly because of whatever, right? So I try to like kind of overcorrect, and like knowing my flaw, I try to build in a system that protects me from that flaw. And so for me, like obviously I'm not a perfect person. I still make mistakes. I still overreact. I still have my moments where I'm just like, ah, but it's like it's like if I'm the type of person that's like, if I know I'm going to have a sweet tooth and, I'm diabetic, I shouldn't be eating sugar right now. Like, if I know that, I'll just be like, I won't buy it. I won't give myself that temptation. I put in that system of like checks and balances for myself. And it's not that I can't understand that other people don't do that, but I'm also like, if this is an issue, like, prepare a solution, like find something to do to help yourself, like, because my therapist said something really great to me this week, and she said, when you're doing your goals for this week, like, be kind to yourself. It's not about achieving something, it's not about correcting behavior, it's about saying, like, it's kind to myself to do this nice thing for me and to take care of me, like eating regularly, getting enough sleep. Like, I'm doing that to be kind to myself, not to like punish myself or deny myself something, like, and I think like, I always try to like think of things like, I'm going to be kind to myself by like saying like, I have this proclivity to some flaw, and so I'm going to try my hardest to like kind of counteract that in a way that's still healthy and safe,
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, but it's that struggle. See, as
Yeah.
you get older, as you become more aware of your flaws, and I know this too. Like, I'm not there yet, but I know maybe about 10 years I'll get to that point, right? And that's this. Like, some of your flaws aren't going to change. Like, some of them
Right.
aren't, and you have to accept what those things are. They're not perfect. They're like no one's got like this perfect system. Like but we all have these like little like jagged edges to ourselves.
Yes.
Now, there's a good to it too. We're not the fact that we all have our own like personalities. If there are some of those like endearing little qualities that produce those flaws,
Yeah.
also produces great things too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so I think like the human condition is a much more complicated thing, and I think the best fiction that showcases that. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you're just doing bad shit for the sake of doing bad shit, and there's nothing redeemable about what you're doing at all. But right, we all have a little bit of that in us, all of us. And the fact of the matter is, um, sometimes it's a necessary evil. I think it's a big part of our psyche, but also, right, it's those having those little qualities in your characters makes them more three-dimensional. Going back to what you said about Superman and Wonder Woman, what's their flaw? Right? What's their flaw? They don't have that. Batman has a flaw. He's so obsessed with trying to stop these murders, he will forget everything else.
Correct the wrong. Yeah.
Like that. That's because he's so driven, so focused, almost a zealot in terms of that, right? That's his flaw. And because it's that flaw, and that exemplifies him perfectly, he does things most ordinary men dream of doing. Right? That's the greatness. But the flaw is he completely isolates himself when he does it. And that is the compelling little conflict with Batman. That's why Batman, there's risk, because there is that part feels real. Like, that part feels very real. Superman, he's a farm boy from Kansas. He's got a great heart, super compassionate. What breaks him? Does he have does he have a drug problem? Does he have Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. But I would say like that makes me think of two things. Like one, doing evil for the sake of doing evil, I feel like falls flat more than doing the wrong thing or doing something bad for a reason, right? Whether it's a good reason or not, like that's very interesting. Like to me, like why you're doing this is very interesting. And I think like even if it's just like because of jealousy or because of insecurity, like that is super relatable and super interesting. And then I just have to say this about myself, like I do have a flaw that will never be fixed. And it's like if you tell me to do something, even if I was going to do it, I will now never do it ever again in my life. If I'm in the car and I'm about to leave and you honk your horn because you're waiting for my spot, like we gonna be here all day. Like we are now I gotta pull out my phone, I gotta call my sister, I gotta like talk to her for 3 hours until you like have moved on with your life or died in your car. Like
Oh, absolutely.
and that's like a stubbornness of mine, that rebel without a cause, that like there is no point of me rebelling, but like I will live that life like till I die.
It's cool that you own it. I have an irrational hatred of Ken as in Barbie and Ken. I think it's because he has no penis. It's completely irrational. Yeah. It's completely irrational, but it's there, right? And right. But I mean, we all. I'm kidding with mine. I have bigger flaws than that. I really do. It's just one of those things where I just we all have our quirks, and that's
we do,
right? And that's what makes us us.
Yes.
So we definitely have a pretty fun chat, I think.
Oh yeah, lovely.
Yeah. So you write stuff, you edit stuff.
I do.
Right. So what came first?
Okay, so I have a story that kind of encapsulates the start of both things for me. I was such a pedantic little kid. And I wanted to do everything like the big kid my sister did and my mom and dad did. So I learned stuff very early, like using potty training was super easy because I was like, everyone goes to the bathroom, I gotta be like everyone else and prove like that I'm a big kid, right? So when I learned to write, I was like, oh, what do I do now? Right? Like I know how to write, I have the skill, what do I do? So I was like, I'll write a story. So I wrote a fairy tale about this beautiful princess, and I was so proud because it had a beginning, it had a middle, and it had an end. And I illustrated it and I showed my sister, and I was so proud, right? I was like vibrating with like satisfaction. And I was like probably like 4, right? So I didn't know how to spell beautiful. So I sounded it out. I was like, beautiful, right? So I spelled it Butiful. And she's like, the Butterful Princess. And she just like, it became this like joke for years about, oh, you're so beautiful. And she like railed me for it, right? So in that moment, I was like, spelling is important. Like spelling is like one of the most important things. I will never make this mistake again, right? I learned how to spell beautiful. I always double check my spellings in the stories I wrote after that. And so like I became a writer, and then I instantly became an editor. The following second, because my sister was like, you made this spelling error and now I'm going to make fun of you for in like the most loving way. But I was like, now I'm also an editor because like I can no longer make mistakes.
You really should call your publication your publishing house Butterful Pub. Like that would be amazing. That would be like totally amazing.
Yes,
I would just submit to it just because I want to say I wrote a Butterful book.
But yeah, beautiful book. Yeah,
I love
trademark.
it.
Yeah, I gotta trademark that now.
You really should. Like honestly, that's amazing. Like that's incredible. So you wrote first, edit. So what do you love more?
Well, I'll tell you what I don't love. I love editing other people's stories. I do not love in any way, shape, or form editing my own stories. And one of those reasons is because like I'm a perfectionist, right? Obviously. If you couldn't tell from that story, right? So what I always tell myself when I'm drafting is this is a rough draft. It's rough for a reason. I'll fix it in editing. So when it comes to editing, I'm like, the pressure, right? I'm like, I always say I'll fix it in editing. I'll make it a good story in editing. So when I get to editing, I'm like, crap, now I gotta like pay the toll, right? I gotta like cash in on my promises earlier of making this a good story. And so that kind of takes a little bit of the joy out of me. But like working on someone else's story is such a joy. You know what I mean? Like you can just be like, you can like see what they're not seeing, or see where a lot of times I find people like have the story so much like, playing out in their head like a movie, but on the page it's not there all the way. So like being able to say like, you have this wonderful creative vision of this world, like fill in the blanks on the page, and like seeing how the story progresses and just how it becomes like the beautiful finished product really is like so satisfying to me.
Yeah, going back to something you just said, I hate editing my own work, but for another reason. There's another big reason. The stuff you miss that's so obvious to everybody here, right? That's the part I
Right.
hate, because it's like I should have saw that. I did not, and
Right. Yeah.
and this is why this page is so red, because it's not even a big thing. It's that, and I
Yeah.
missed it the whole way through the manuscript. That's why it's here.
Right.
Time. My
Yeah.
editor now is beating me over the head with this because I missed it. I missed it big
Right.
time, because that's the other thing too. And I just recognize this. There's a so this I've talked about this on other shows. I have a new. I won't say I've evolved my writing style from this first book to the second, like this book right now. The first novel, I'm really proud of it, but there are things that like, oh, looking back, I'm like, I can do this better. So this story in particular is been an exercise in this new style, and so it's taking me a little longer than I thought. So there's no sads, there's no asks, there's no questions. Everything is a story. Like I said, learning, like I said earlier, everything has a language to it, and because everything has a language to it now, and I understand this more levels to this. I'm telling stories within stories, which is probably gonna hurt. Which is probably gonna hurt my brain when I get to my own. Because I still will edit this. Somewhat have to. Words I use very much. Okay, let's find very. Let's eliminate that one because I know that's a bad habit.
Right.
Very. Okay, I'm better at images than this. I write for a living. Fuck off. I can do better than this. Right. But so I have what I call 3 edits, and these are the 3 edits I'm going to do, and then I'm going to say I can't do this no more. I need to give this to somebody else. Edit 1 is the polish of the polish I can see. I know it will need more polish than what I can do, but I'm not completely blind. I'm just mostly blind, and I'm good at like, the stuff I can see. I'm going to nip in the bud. The second one's what I call the emotional resonance edit, which is what I'm saying actually making the writing, like the point I'm getting across, stronger, or is this a waste of time? And then the third edit is going to be, well, I know the first probably a little bit of this novel is probably going to go through a heavy. Now I'm going to say rewrite exactly, like expansion, because I recognize like with the way I formatted this book, there's a lot more I could add. So I'm going to try something with that expansion edit, but it's also going to be my emotional resonance edit, because it's going to be like, okay, did I make you laugh and cry? Did I make you feel sad? Yeah, like what am I doing here? And then the third edit is going to be maybe more the expansion, like the expansion contraction. Okay, needs this, get rid of this, needs this, get rid of this. I'm going to give it to my editor. It's brilliant, with tears in my eyes as I'm going to go away in the corner. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Waiting for it to bleed red again when you get it back in your hand.
I'd be like, but how is it? But I do know I'm on the right track, because I actually have a beta reader that hated mine, but was really confused with my first novel. But she was so this is why actually I'm doing a criticism thing in literally a half hour, so you're gonna thread this up unfortunately soon. But but the thing about what I was gonna say is her criticisms were valid. And because her criticisms were valid, it made me look at my style and go, I cheated. I wouldn't say I cheated myself exactly, but I learned, and now it's like, okay, now I got to apply this with the next book, so that when I do my other books now, I'll be a better writer and a better person going through this process. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. One thing I do want to say is that, like, with criticism, though, you do have to sit with it and say, you know, there's just for something, like, some people have a tendency to be like, oh, I got this comment or I got this critique, I have to change it to, I have to fix it. But sometimes critiques aren't worth as much as you think. You know what I mean?
No.
So you have to really sit with them and be like, okay, like, what has value, what is valid, and what really applies to my story. Because, like, some people, like, hate the word was. Like, they're like, oh, it's passive tense. I'm like, there's a whole verb tense. Was running, was dreaming, you know, like, is a valid word to be used, and people don't always understand what passive tense is. And so, like, you know, if you get, like, the critique, oh, you have too much passive tense or passive voice in your story, and you're like, I didn't say, like, the time found me sitting here. Like, that's passive tense, right? Not she was running through the woods, you know. So make sure that you do sit with criticism and critique and say, like,
yeah, no,
apply.
It was not just that her point out, like, literally, so the solution kind of, I got the problem from one source and then I got the solution from another source.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Right.
Serendipity. I got the answer.
No, it was serendipitous, right? So here's the thing with criticism with me. So here's a criticism of my novel that I completely ignored. Goes, because in the novel I treated the 13th floor like a lot of the old buildings. Like, there's no 13th floor. There's a 12th and a 14th, right? And so the 13 is unlock something. One, because if it ever does get made into a cinematic game or movie, well, that 13 can be a very powerful cue. And I'm like, ta-da! So they go to me, there's not going to be any superstitions in the future. And I looked at that and I said, okay, sure.
We're all a little stitious. That's what I say. We're all a little stitious.
So, you know, and seriously, the way that novel worked out anyway, I could put lucky underwear in there and no one would notice. Like, no one notice even a little bit. It would just feel right about the story, like, completely. But it's one of those situations where you just like, like, I think as a writer you have to be open to the fact that your shit stinks sometimes. I think that's the thing. Like, you gotta recognize, like,
people have the inclination to be like, everyone who criticizes me is wrong. They don't understand my vision. Like, no, that's why I say sit with it for both reasons. Like, because it may be valid and because it may not be valid. You know what I mean? Give it a day before you beat yourself up or before you say, like, it doesn't apply.
And the question you asked, ladies and gentlemen, is this: do I have a counter argument to it? If the answer is no, even if you don't fully agree with it, there's something to it. Like, there's just something to it. Right. That's what I've learned anyway. So
yeah.
So before we wrap up, you illustrate too, right?
So I consider myself an amateur artist. I do it because I love it. I do it because it's an interest. I definitely wouldn't say I'm a professional. I do my best and I try to have fun with it. And so that's that's where I end up. Like I said, sometimes it's hard because I am a perfectionist, that I feel like if I make a mistake or do something that doesn't look aesthetically appealing, then I'll just be like, I suck at everything, and, like, throw it across the room and cry. But that I've actually gotten into doing graphics more, like promotional graphics, advertisements for people in marketing. And I love it because it's like, oh, this background looks too busy. Like, click, click, click. Oh, it now looks perfect. You know, it's like, it's a very safe way to practice creativity and art and get the visual, like, get that visual satisfaction of, like, I made something that looks really cool, without being like, I spent 3 hours painting this and then I dropped a blob on the face of my painting and now it's ruined forever and I'm gonna cry. But yeah, I do amateur art.
That was my attempt at Kung Lao. Didn't quite get it, but I learned how to do lips.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have learned, and I've embraced this about myself. I don't need to necessarily be good. I just have to have
Yes.
fun. And that
Yes.
carries
It's
you.
about the experience, not the end product. Yes.
Not, no. Sometimes it's about the end product, but in some cases, no. Sometimes it's just about learning. I find
Yeah,
everything's
yeah.
experience. So, Miss Julia, I think we have an interview here. Was it good?
Okay. Oh, yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed being on here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you promote stuff? Like, because you're awesome.
Oh,
Yes.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be promoting stuff. So promote the stuff and things and why people can find you and stuff.
Yes. So stuff and things. I actually just got my books back, and I am in the very exciting process of going through and looking at editing again, redoing like I'm making new covers, and it's like the most exciting, fun thing ever. So my books will be re-releasing. I do write as J.K. Allen, and I write primarily young adult urban fantasy. But me and my sister are doing a book that we want to come out for Halloween season, and it is a short story horror compilation. So it is so much fun. It's not my usual genre, but I have so much fun doing it. So keep an eye out for that. You can find me at hijinkswriter.com. And my social media handles on Instagram and everything is hijinkswriter. So find me online and keep your eye out. My books will be coming out very soon. I'm so excited.
I'm really excited too. And stick around after this so I can get some final information for you. But for
Yeah.
everybody else, that will do it for this episode. This episode was long overdue. Like I said, if I meet Julia in person and my eye is shut, I met the door. I totally met the door. Truthfully, Julia was a wonderful, wonderful guest. I thank you very much for having it. And for everybody else that's watching, listening, thank you for watching and or listening, depending on what you did. If you want to support this podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. One, hit the follow button on my Twitch TV. I am literally 11 followers away from becoming an affiliate. So if you join me and I'll get to 50, I'll be like, yeah, that'd be great. My YouTube channel as well is Joshua Pantellaresco. You can click on the like and subscribe button there. There's every podcast is there, including some clips from all the episodes here. I want to thank Julia. I want to thank everybody that watched and listened. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And next week, I will see you all Monday.